got a grant of $250,000 from the federal government. So Tessa said that they're in the best position in the history of the organization. So I know there's been a lot of nonprofit or type of community outreaches in other areas of the state. The country has really struggled. And so I think it's just a sign that the Davis Arts Council is run well and that they're in a good position and they're able to go forward and move it. So that was they're an important partner with the city. So I'm good to see that they're able to move forward.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, I have a couple of things. The Communities That Cares, on the August 13th Layton Fest, they're going to have a booth and they're going to work with the school resource officers on an anti-vaping campaign. We just finished putting the data together for the youth for both Northbridge and Layton, and that's the #1 problem we're having. So we figured it'd be a good time before school starts to kind of educate some parents on that. And the Communities That Cares is also, there are 3 grants that we may qualify for. We're just trying to find somebody to help write a grant. And then our youth council, they've done a few things over the summer, and they've also been helping with the Meet the Candidates night that's going to be Tuesday, July 20th at the OPA. And the information's just going out on that. And then I had mentioned to the mayor, and I just want to bring it up again, but we participated in that wellness survey with Utah State, and Dr. Fuente is requesting to come and present the results, and so I think that we probably entertain that. And that's all I have.
Can I ask a question? The vaping, is it still vaping #1, but marijuana
Is number 2.
Is the
Vaping is actually more prevalent than marijuana,
but vaping marijuana.
Vaping marijuana, yeah, that
That's
goes along with it too.
That's on the rise.
It's on the rise as well. And there is a bill right now that's going to be presented that's going to kind of mess with the nicotine level of some of these. So we're hoping that doesn't pass, that they're going to be able to restrict the percentage of nicotine in these products that are said to be used. The industry would love to see a higher percentage.
Are the resource officers in the area, are we seeing those issues as well? I mean, what do they do at the schools with that?
Most go to juvenile usually, and then, but a lot of them end up going to our youth program. Which is really
That's actually the main thing.
really good way to do it.
Yeah, and I know I went and spent a morning with a resource officer at Northridge, and he had a desk full of confiscated vaping products. So. And some of them are, I don't know, they don't look like what you would think they look like, and that's the reason why we think we want to get some education out to parents as to what's looking for.
Along those lines, they, August 13th, we think the attendance is still up there running up with the list.
Yeah. We'll have probably 400 to 600 people.
And they have approached you, haven't they? She said yesterday in the meeting that she was going to talk to you guys about it.
And she probably talked to Michelle.
Okay.
Anyone else? Well, let's carry on with some more this moment with Mr. Gary Crane, our fantastic trainer.
Well, I'll miss it anyway, but the rest of them are going to really miss this when you're done.
Yeah.
I wish
politicians would tell the truth.
Well, we're trained by an attorney, what do you expect?
If you want the truth, then,
Sorry.
if you want the truth, then nothing will last,
All right. Then,
so we can run out of time.
okay. Well, Alex told me to keep it short again, so here's what we're going to do. Okay. We're going to talk about okay. When Paul came into the room today, he sat in this chair. Why? Because nobody else dares sit in this chair.
I was assigned this.
This is Tom's chair. He was told to sit in this chair, so he is entitled to sit in this chair. He's vested in this chair. Dave, say it louder. Entitlement.
Don't use that word. There's a person at the end of the thing here that doesn't like that word.
So, vesting means simply that you have a right to something. And that right can be developed by the mayor, this is where you're gonna sit. Did she actually do that? Yeah. Did she give that to you too? Is that?
And we follow instructions pretty well.
Okay, so you're vested because you've got somebody in authority that told you where you need to sit. In zoning, the way you become vested is the law tells you what you can do and can't do in your zoning. And because the law tells you what you can and can't do, it's what kind of decision? Once you've made the law, it's administrative, right?
Yeah.
You're applying the law. So the law tells you what you can and can't do, and you're entitled to approval of an application as long as you meet all the requirements of that law. And then you're vested in those requirements. So if you bring a subdivision in, and that subdivision meets all the requirements of the current law, you're vested in those requirements. There's only a couple of exceptions to vesting. And one is that if somebody comes in and tries to sit in Tom's seat ahead of Tom, okay, to try and stop him from doing that, there are jurisdictions that actually try to pass a law while Tom's actually coming in and trying to sit in that seat. And that's called, if you got a law that exists and you got an application that's pending, and the city tries to change that law while that application is pending, that's a no-no. You can't do that. But if you try and change that law before Tom gets here, I'll bet you if Zach sat in Tom's seat before Tom got here, that Tom would find another seat that he probably wouldn't complain about it. That's the same with the developer. When he comes in and you've already got the law started to be changed through the planning commission, through the official process, the developer can't complain about it because you've already begun the process. They do give you a limited amount of time. They give you 6 months, up to 6 months, to actually make that change, to complete that change. But if you got a change in the law, the developer can't come in, run in, and try and change the law very, very quickly to prevent you from trying to take advantage of the old law. Does that make sense? The other reason that you can stop a vesting is if there's a compelling, countervailing public reason for stopping it. For example, all of a sudden you discover that there's a scarp, an earthquake scarp, through the middle of the subdivision. And so you have to, and you didn't have any regulation regarding you can't allow scarps to be through the middle of the subdivision and still put a home in that area. That's an immediate, compelling countervailing is a really high standard. And it's not just, you know what, we really don't like vape shops at these locations, and so that's a compelling countervailing public reason for us stopping the allowing of vape shops in this particular area. You can't do that. You can't. It has to be something that is almost life and death before you can actually stop it. The last thing that you need to know about vesting is that you can create vesting another way. You can create vesting by somebody in authority telling you you can do it. For example, if somebody came, what happened to me was when I first got out of school, I was hired as a planner with West Valley, and I approved a great big garage in somebody's backyard. It was the biggest garage you've ever seen. And new planner, checked it all off, setbacks were right, everything else was correct, but I didn't check to see the coverage ratio in the backyard. And you weren't allowed to cover more than 25% of the backyard. And that thing covered almost 100% of the backyard. But I went ahead and approved it. The guy went and poured cement, and he built the building, and he had apparent authority from me. I was authorized to give him that certificate or that permit. And so now you got a problem, right? He doesn't meet the zoning code. He can't get vested because it's illegal for him to put that thing there. But I've approved it. And so how's that settled in court? I'll tell you, it's called estoppel, right?
what?
That's called estoppel. The city is estopped from trying to enforce the zoning code against this individual, okay? If somebody with apparent authority has approved it, okay, and the person has changed their position to their detriment, and he spent thousands and thousands of dollars on that thing before we finally figured out that Crane had made a mistake. And so the city has two choices when that happens. You don't have to leave that thing there. But if it has been approved officially by the city, what you have to do is pay to remove that and reimburse him for the costs of removing it. Because an official person had approved it, somebody giving their official approval. So you don't have to live with the violation, but if somebody official has approved something, a project, that's called promissory, or it's not promissory, but estoppel. And zoning estoppel is, they enforce it. So
Is there an
that's your,
unstoppable?
is there what?
An unstoppable?
Unstoppable?
I mean, what if everybody said it's fine?
The unstoppable would be to change the law. Change the law. And yes, you have that choice. You can always change the law, right?
You could still stop it if you haven't started.
If you haven't started, you can stop it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But once, let's say you got it built and then somebody found it, and you can't just say, we'll live with
That's essentially what the city ended up doing.
it. So you
So to
didn't,
this day,
you
there's a
didn't
very
pay.
big.
I want to see this.
Every time I drive
Past that thing, I look at it and I think, oh boy, that was me. The guy was me. Anyway,
Short question, Gary. So the developer comes in, he requests a rezone. He's not vested yet until they actually submit the application for the subdivision, correct?
that's correct.
Did you guys know this?
He's not vested. So the question was, person comes in for a rezone, gets it zoned, the property zoned, he's vested in the zone. And that's an important question, because the question is always, what are they really vested in?
Right.
They're only vested in whatever application they file. So the next step is subdivision. Now they're vested in everything to do with the subdivision plan, right? And then next you've got a building permit. They're vested in everything to do with the building permit. So you're only vested in the law for the permit that you're applying for, or for the application.
So the step that you follow.
Correct.
Right.
That's it. This is
That's
probably,
a good one.
this is one of the most important principles in zoning. So, basically, any questions? Good. All right.
It's good for us, for you.
No, I had apparent authority on the bars. And so when you said that, I just.
Oh, your eyes
Back
lit
in
up.
time.
You
That's-
can see it.
I can see that.
Yeah, you all of a sudden.
Remembering something painful.
That's good. Well, let's move on to item number 3 then, which is an update on our water conservation, and I think Steve Jackson and Dave Price is gonna present that to us.
Yeah, what we want to do here is, okay, just add that. We've had several inquiries. You know that each of you have had inquiries from people that are interacting with people. And Steve, are you going to drive? We reached out asking questions. So that would be appropriate to just give a little bit of an update on some of the metrics that we have. We don't have to live told some of the secondary water. It's not sure what secondary water last night, and so it's hard to count. We've got some information that we believe indicates that the process, in addition to the ground lawns, you can see there's some other actually usage data and trend data that will just tell us we're heading in the right direction. It's positive, so we want to share that with you and try to answer any questions. Also talking in parks specifically, where that's a big water user, is an approach that we're taking, have been taking for several weeks, that we think is a graded approach, staged approach to how we're treating different types of different classifications of ground to make sure that we're putting water where it needs to be in order to wear that.
All right, so thanks for the opportunity to be here. Just wanted to show a few graphs and kind of go over some data that we've been tracking. So this chart shows 2020 evaporatranspiration data from April through October, but the blue line is our current 2021 evapotranspiration numbers. You can see that just for everybody's reminder, evapotranspiration is the amount of water that is lost from plants due to the temperatures and just the transpiration of the process that they go through to live. So we trend pretty close in April and May, but then you can see in June we're closer to a July evapotranspiration number here. So what does that mean to all of us? Well, when you water your lawn, if you got a higher evapotranspiration, it needs more water to survive. And what we've had to do is the state as a whole is change from watering to thrive to watering to survive. And so you can see the average high temperature is also 10 degrees higher in June than it was last year. It's higher than it was in July last year. So this trend is also 6% higher in July this year to date than it was last year. So we're seeing a big spike in the temperatures. So what does that mean? It means that the ET need for water at a quarter-acre lot or any lot would go up just because of that evapotranspiration. So this is the chart that kind of has that data on it. I don't want to go through all the numbers for you, but this number of 7.17, this is what it is in July of 2020. We anticipate it will be north of that easily if the temperatures continue. So you can see we went from an average high of 78 to 89 this last year versus the year before, and we're already trending an average high of 95 versus 89. So as you look at the data, the numbers, if you were to take a quarter-acre lot, we're seeing that over the April through June from this year to last year, there's a 7% increase average in the need for water on the lots. And you can see it in April, it was 4.4, in May it was 0.2 higher, and then in June, that's the big one, 14% higher would be the need for those plants. So again, we've asked people to stop watering at these numbers because we're in that thrive or survive versus thrive. So
just to weather.
I was gonna just say, so the point here is this is need, not necessarily
Yes, this is
usage,
need.
right?
yeah, so let me jump to the next ones.
And
that
that
shows.
shows, I want to make sure, sorry,
Yeah.
so just strictly based on the law, I guess, natural law, whatever you want to call it, but that's the long term.
Weather.
Of the weather, we have 7.1%, 4.4%, that's what should have happened with the demand on the system, just based on this ET rate. That's logically, usually I was talking to Steve, it's a really good predictor, it's pretty accurate consistently. The temperatures go up, water demand goes up, right? Absent conservation efforts or actions people take to go against that. So that's a really important establishment of base.
I think we probably, there's these numbers here, the ones that you're saying that it should be, is that based on what Weaver Basin would say or what people actually do? Because I would think that it's even more than.
Well, this is the number from our water use report, which is the number from them. So you're absolutely right. There are potential that people are using more than that. And so when you get a hot summer, this number for the ET goes up 14%, but people sometimes go beyond that when they water. So the message though is we've been saving, and we've been saving a substantial amount. There's always room to improve, but from the standpoint of what we're doing, we've averaged 5.7% decrease over last June or 2020's numbers from April through June, and that's equivalent to about 78 million gallons of water. Okay, we saw a 15.5 million gallon decrease from April to April of 21 to 20, which is a 6% decrease. We saved about 79.4 in May, and then we did see an uptick in June, but it's only 17, it's 2.8%, 17 million. But again, we've been 10 degrees hotter on average every single day. So what does that mean? Well, if everybody had just been watering without drought restrictions in place, we calculated those numbers based on these demands up here. And we came up with the total gallons that we would have needed for water in April, May, and June. And then we calculated what the actual use is, which are these numbers here. And we estimate that we could have potentially saved ourselves 26 million in April, 80 million in May, and another 70 million in June, and so that's 175 million, 180 million, 176 million gallons. So on a chart, this is what we're seeing.
So you're saying that's what we did say?
But potentially, I mean, we're saying we know for a fact we used 78 million gallons less than last year in this
Right.
April through June. There's a potential that if people had just watered it whatever they felt like they needed, that we potentially have saved 176 million gallons, because we would have expected with that higher temperature in June that we would have been closer to this July number than we were, where we were just slightly above June of last year. But you can see there's 80 million gallons that we know did not get put on the lawns in May or outdoor in May because we were sending that message
Yeah.
in that people are trying. You can clearly see that there's an effort being made. We've responded to over 140 complaints of excess water use. Wes and his guys have been out, monitoring things. They send door hangers, they make contact with people. So it's
We have
not,
repeat offenders?
we get them from multiple places though, and so it's kind of hard to
I don't
tell
know if it's before or
if it's
after.
before or after, but yes, we've had a few complaints on the same locations.
Do we have historical data about a similar situation, or does it seem like people maybe have woken up that we live in the desert?
It's hard to tell. The last time the ET numbers were this high that we found were about 2016. So it's been 5 years or so since we've seen a demand on the system like this. But again, the reminder is this started last year. 2020 was one of the driest, if not the driest on record. And so we had this problem, and now it's just being exacerbated because we had really dismal water here with the winter snowpack and the dry soils and just absorbed all that runoff. So.
I think there's two points. One point to what you're saying, Zach, is that the last time I think we collectively tried to say you need to cut back, and there was rationing and limitations put on water, the usage actually went up
Oh,
in
yeah.
our experience. So this is a much different experience, to your point, that I think people are getting it, because before it was, I'm going to get it while I can.
Right.
And maybe it's a matter of this is going on for 2 years as opposed to, this has been a 1 year cycle. So I think that is a big thing. The other thing is, remember this, it's obvious too, I just want to emphasize it, is that these numbers are just metered. We know these numbers coming out of our coloring system. This doesn't speak to the amount of secondary water, because it's not metered, that has been saved. And you can see it in the way the lawns left, and there is a cutback. But we don't know what those numbers are because we don't have the meter. These are all meter numbers. So we think the number's even higher. And of course, Scott and all the companies, everybody's saying the same message consistently. And it seems like it's sinking in.
Yeah. Could we get Weaver Basin's number? Because we're metered. I mean, they're not charging us via the meter.
They don't.
How much, to the hour, how much water we're
Yeah,
using.
they don't have their full system metered
Rob,
either.
How far are they to get that?
Most of them
They're not
are
Layton
all.
City.
Yeah,
Zach,
they're
yes, we did it.
sorry, they're close, but they're constantly working on projects to get everybody metered because it is so important to know these numbers.
But are they saying, much like there's in the discussions among water people, or is Weaver Basin saying that just anecdotally, just without the metric, we think the message is working, we're down here?
Yeah, I think collectively we're seeing some of that, but then there's always those outliers out there who just think that, water comes out of the tap when you turn it on and you just use it. And so that's the constant balance we have, and we're trying to manage that.
I just think it's important with our landscaping ordinance and how we're pushing this, that if there really is a change in the way people are understanding water, hopefully maybe it's reached critical mass, and that our policy decision making can make this even a regular thing, right? We're not going to ask them to ground their lawns every year, hopefully, but hopefully if they're building a house, they've landscaped it in a way that will save water, and so I think this is just hopefully the start of a snowball, and that's why I asked about the historical precedents, because my hope is that you kind of turn the corner and people maybe start to understand that this is a serious issue.
The frustration I've seen on this I've experienced is we have two businesses. We've asked, please don't put it inside. And what have they done? Put the landscape inside because they're in the real landscape rather than trying to hold off. And so I pass both of those daily. watering constantly. And it's frustrating. That particular message did not.
But I think it's important to know though that it's easy to find the outliers, but like the numbers don't lie. I mean, that's a pretty substantial, between 78 and 175 million gallons of water is a lot. And especially when the historical precedent is that they actually went up when we tried to do drought restrictions before. And this was without any sort of, fee structure, penalizing people for using water above certain demands. So it's really just a matter of like a narrative
It's
change.
messaging.
Yeah, it's a narrative change, and I think that's how it should be.
Everybody's done a great job with
It's
that.
been so unified too, from the governor on down.
So we just gotta keep the momentum.
And that's what we're seeing from a statewide level, and so they've even got this drought.utah.gov website. They're listing these things, they have a weekly drought update here. They show the drought monitor. One of the real telling things is if you look at this map, this is from July 14th of 2020 to July 13th of 2021. This is what it looked like last year. This is what it looks like now. We have just been bombarded with this drought, and people are seeing it, they're hearing it, and we're hoping this message will stick. And then we're talking with the groups, the stakeholders, about what you do after the drought ends. There needs to be a unified message about when it ends and how we can move forward, but still not go back to our old habits.
And don't think that things are, so that they're going great. I mean, right now, we're the hottest we've been in a bunch of years. So that is a reminder of itself. We may be in the same drought next year, but if it's cooler, people may use more water. So they don't, that thought isn't there.
That's a major concern right now, is the reservoirs are dropping.
Right.
And if they don't refill this winter, then
They won't be using.
we won't be having more water, is basically the answer. And that's not a scare tactic, that's just the reality. The water season this winter is really going to determine what happens next
But
year.
we're still, I'm not gonna be an naysayer, but you're not gonna fill them up 1 year either.
It's gonna be difficult.
Not when it was only 3%.
Not with what is going on, but
I think what's helped the most is, I don't think you ever saw this, if there was just one city or two cities, it's a unified effort.
that's
But
everywhere.
more than that, I think people are really seeing it this year, and experiencing it with the hot temperatures.
Yeah.
They're going boat, when they can't launch their boat, they're seeing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's making a big difference here.
So Steve, that 76 million gallons or whatever, how many acre feet is that? Can you do the math?
There's 325,850 gallons.
500.
Well, the reason why I ask is because Lehigh they did a media push down in their city.
540.
Okay, that told how many gallons and 1,600 and something acre feet of water that they had saved. And I think that this is positive enough that I would hope that we share with our residents that, hey,
It's 2,393 acres. No, I think the message needs to be, thank you for doing your
Yeah.
part, keep doing it, because we're not out of the woods.
Yeah,
It
true.
kind of sounds like we're going through this with the pandemic and now the drought, but it's the same thing. Tell people thank you, but keep encouraging them to do more. It's survive, not thrive is the universal message right now in the state, is you're not watering to make things look good, you're watering it to keep it alive long enough that it can survive until next year when it can recover.
yeah, that slow flow actually has different graphics that you can print out and put in your window about thriving or, yellow's doing whatever, dormant's the best, or,
Yellow is the new green, that's what the.
yeah,
we saw
or brown
today.
one is sexy or
So
whatever.
along those same lines, I do want to say thank you guys, because I know everybody's done a fantastic job on really trying to get the messaging out and coming up with the app and doing everything we can at the city. One thing on the app, if we can proceed with doing this, just a quick tutorial explaining it and put it out there, because I did have some folks kind of say, well, we get it, but we don't. So I think they're struggling with the metrics on how they can.
Have you had any sign up?
Well, they have access to it whenever they sign up for an account online, so we don't necessarily track who
Yeah,
has
track.
it, but anybody who has an online account has access to it.
just stay away from Allswell.
No, it's not all as well.
No, it's
There
not.
is absolutely not all as
We're
well. I
saving
won't even
water,
sugarcoat that. It is not.
If we don't continue, it's,
Well, the important thing is people are actually listening and trying to do what they can. And this is just another way to kind of help reemphasize it and give them a guidance on how to improve, so to contribute to additional savings.
Yeah. So absolutely, the message needs to be, we're still in this. It's not all as well. Thank you for your efforts, but keep it going and do whatever you can because we're not out of it. I'm going to turn it over to Dave. He's got some good information too.
Actually, I think Scott would agree, your next couple of months are we're still going to keep people lesson.
Maybe I need a water.
It might not be,
Probably 6 weeks.
so if they don't believe, they will.
I don't have a lot in my new house.
yeah, the whole creek.
Hey, thank you for letting us come by and talk to you about our water conservation plan. We began to put this together after we met last time, and we've refined it, and it's in place now. In our parks, we've got 3 stages of watering. Stage 1 is that we water 1 time a week. It's for detention basins, park strips without trees and shrubs. And stage 2 is 2 times a week. That's our neighborhood parks, park strips with trees. And stage 3, we're watering 3 times a week. Ellison Park, the athletic fields in neighborhood parks, and areas that have large community gatherings. And so to kind of give that some context, this is one of our larger detention basins. This is Great Hawk Detention Basin. Our goal is simply to keep the grass alive so that it can come back next year. And some of the latest data that we were looking at is that even in this dormancy period, grass needs a little bit of water to make it successful through to the next year. And so that's what we're trying to do. We water 1 day a week and we water a little less than we normally would. We accept that the grass will go brown. We, again, are just trying to keep this grass alive. And so as you drive through the city and you see these detention basins, understand that that's why it's in this condition. Now, when you walk up onto the street, the park strip is getting a little bit more water, but that's just because the trees need it to survive as well. We also are mowing less frequently because when the grass is dormant, it's very fragile. And if you break that crown of the grass plant with a big mower, it simply does not have the success of coming back like it would normally. And then we also suspend any chemical weed control. Stage 2, this is out in our neighborhood parks. If you drove by any of them, you'll see a marked difference from previous years.
That's much better than a couple days ago. It's forever.
Okay. See, now this is, we're proud that we're able to help save water, but this is tough for an old parks guy.
I can only imagine what you're thinking.
But we understand that this is what's necessary. So we water twice a week. Again, we understand that the grass will go brown. We're just trying to keep the grass alive and make sure that we can come back as we need to for athletic programs. And so we again are minimizing mowing and keeping it suspending the control. Some of these areas that we've been able to completely brown out during the summer, we will be applying a little more water so that we can prepare to have our athletic teams out there. And so that they can play there on a safe space and also keep the grass, keep the investment we have. Stage 3 is we're watering 3 days a week. We're still using best management practices to conserve water but we're doing this in an effort to protect our investment and to provide safe spaces. And so Ellison Park and Commons Park here around this building, we have kept a little greener, a little healthier, so because of all the people that attend festivals here, as well as at Ellison, all the people that play sports down there. Go ahead, please.
Doesn't with Commons, the fact that there's so many trees, I mean, that's really bad to help.
It helps quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to keep the trees alive.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so our staff is working really hard to be, not only to do the right thing, be proactive, but we're also very agile in how we're watering these parks. And so Commons Park, the south part of the park, we kept very green up and through the 4th of July because we knew we were going to have that big crowd here. Right after that, we began to cut back the water on the south end of the park. And so in the next two weeks, you'll see that change because we don't have that same type of capacity of people out there.
Is any of this grass in a situation where people shouldn't be on it? Are you posting that to people to stay off the grass?
I've got a picture.
Oh, okay.
And so even here at Ellison Park and Commons, where we are still trying to keep the grass healthy so it's safe, we are also doing everything we can to save water and to manage this appropriately. And so you can see here, even though this year has been hotter than we have had in the past, you can see by the blue lines in the bottom chart that we have been saving water from the previous year. And if you look right up on the top there, for the first 3 months, you can see that between last year and this year, we've saved some water and still been able to keep the grass playable for our teams. Any questions about that? Don, as you mentioned, this is what happens when it gets dormant and teams get on our fields. This happened within about a week and a half. And they went dormant, and we had an outside agency come in and begin their practices, and they were there every evening. And they, unfortunately, before we could catch them, they practiced in the same exact spot each evening. And this is what happens. And so as we begin to move back into football and flag football and fall ball, we will again put some water back onto these fields where we know those teams are going to be practicing so that we don't lose that investment. Not only is it expensive to oversee or replace the sod, but it takes time out of our spring fields. So
And it requires additional water to sprout it.
keep it going. And so we're doing everything we can to maximize our water savings, but still keep our investment whole. Any questions?
Just because I know this is live streamed, can we address the daytime water? I mean, you guys got a good handle on it, but I think it'd be good for people to understand why that's occurring on occasion.
On occasion, we have attempted to do, like last time we talked about how we test occasionally. We're attempting to do those tests in the early morning hours. So there are fewer times that we have our water on during the week. We follow the state guidelines as to when we can begin to water, and also when we shut it off in the morning. And so at 10 o'clock, those systems are turning off. We do have an occasional one that will have a control of malfunction or a missed program, but right now we get a call really quick. Our neighbors are watching, and we've only had 2 this year. So.
Thank you.
This is a big deal, and you can tell that it's planned out. And I know you're like, folks, but you're saving the water and you're putting it where it needs to be, exactly like you said, and it's good to be able to tell the residents and the citizens that we're doing what we're asking, what we're all asking each of us to do. But the city's not above that, or we didn't have pictures of the Public Works building up, it's all dry as well in front of that building. And so, just thank you for your efforts, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Good job. Okay. We'll move on to item number 4, which is the development guidelines and design standards. And Mr. Jackson, back up.
Thanks for letting me come back.
You did such a good job.
Oh. So our development guidelines and design standards are a document that the engineering division uses to guide any construction that goes on in the city.
So tonight before you will be ordinance 21-20. To approve those changes, the state law requires that we present them and have them adopted by ordinance, so that's what we do. The engineering staff has gone through the standards. We've made some corrections to make sure that we're consistent throughout the document, that we're meeting all of the state codes and the requirements and any ordinance changes that we have as well. We've tried to update this year a lot of the standards to make sure that they are in harmony with what the actual practice is on the ground, and so we've made a lot of pretty minor corrections, but there are some in there for low impact development. It's a fairly new standard, and so we've had a little bit more time to digest that one and take the opportunity to adjust some of those standards to make sure they're in harmony with what we need to do. So talked to Councilwoman Fitzpatrick about a few questions she had, but I don't know if there's any others I can answer. I don't want to go through the whole list. It's pretty long. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and address them. If not, then
Did you decide the sidewalk issue?
we will be able to take care of that with just a little word change. So, yeah. There's a section that says any sidewalk or any park strip has to have a 5-foot sidewalk, but our ordinance does allow for a 4-foot sidewalk and park strip. So we can do that to make sure that it's clear that park strip and a 4-foot sidewalk is.
And that's only cul-de-sac.
And just a cul-de-sac.
No other
Right.
questions? That's easy. Might as well stay there or go on to the next item.
I've got the next one too. So. Resolution 2132 is the adoption or the acceptance of the interlocal cooperative agreement with Layton City and Davis County, transportation project reimbursement. So this is the funding that we received from the Davis County COG related to the 2700 West project. So this is the long-awaited agreement that got, I'm going to say, stuck with the attorneys down at the county for a little while, but it's finally finished, and so this just allows us to officially accept that $3 million that was awarded to us this year, or excuse me, last year, basically, and there's a 20% match, which is being covered by more than 20% in our project right now. And so it does tell us that we need to spend the money within 2 years. We'll probably have it spent by the end of this year. So I don't know if there's any questions you have on that. They do intend to award this coming year another $3 million for the remainder of that project. So. All right. Thank you.
We're moving along tonight. Good. Mr. Crane, you want to tackle item number 6?
Sure, and then you hit the wall.
No, we didn't. We didn't get deeper dive.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council. We've got Scott Green from Case Creek Irrigation Company here, who is essentially sits on the board and also is the director for Case Creek Irrigation. So I've also got Mason Carrot, one of our attorneys in my office that knows a lot about water, other than just that his wife, he knows quite a bit about water, and we appreciate that. So what we've gone through this a number of times, and I think I've expressed to you a number of times the importance of this agreement. Thank you for letting me do that. Because in my 30 years here, or just about 30 years here, I don't think I've ever brought to you a more important agreement than the agreement that you're looking at tonight. And I don't know who orchestrated this whole thing, but we couldn't have brought it to you at a better time, in a better year, and to emphasize the point that water is just a resource that we just ain't having too much more of it. And we have a total of 23,000 acre feet of water that we would need in order to build the city out and be able to provide water fairly to everybody, be able to provide enough to drink, provide enough for minimize landscaping that we're looking at. 8,000 acre feet of that it will be made up for secondary water. That's what our master plan shows. And we've been working off that master plan for a number of years. You tweaked it a little, you've heard a lot about it. I think Steve's made 7 presentations on the water master plan. I dream about it sometimes. And it's but nonetheless, he does a very good job of presenting it. 15,000 acre feet of that is culinary. So we're pulling that from basins under the earth. And nobody knows how much water is actually under there. They do the estimates, engineers do. And then we also do that through contracts that we have with Weaver Basin. And they're old contracts. They're contracts that essentially they expire in 50 years. And Weaver Basin has been good, about increasing those only according to how much it costs to maintain and to be able to provide that water. So any M&O costs, maintenance and operation costs, we're assessed for. But those are jewels. Those contracts are jewels, as are the secondary water rights that exist in Layton City. And so, why are we doing this? What I want to do is I want to walk through these slides with you. I'm going to race through these slides with you because you know all this, because essentially what I started with was what we showed you 2 years ago. And the essential summary that we gave you 2 years ago of what we would be putting into an agreement. And then recently we brought the agreement back to you. And so the primary purpose for putting these slides together is not as much for the city council as it would be for those who are seeing this for the first time, in the public. But all of these things. We've actually discussed them with you. We've had an opportunity of sitting with you and answering questions with you. And now is the time to essentially make a decision on this agreement. It was interesting when we were talking the other day. I pointed out to Don that this is a pre-agreement, really. It's an agreement that will go nowhere unless the subsequent steps take place. And the subsequent steps are it has to be approved by Case Creek Irrigation Company and by their shareholders in order for it to take effect. But the important thing tonight is that Layton City take a positive position relative to this agreement to demonstrate to both the board and to the shareholders and to all those involved that this is a good thing. It's a good thing for the end result, is a good thing for the city. We may disagree as to how it gets put together, and we can certainly always amend the agreement in small ways, but the bottom line is ultimately Layton City needs this water as part of its general plan for the citizens that are currently provided water by Case Creek, as well as future citizens. And so we do have a mutual benefit to both Case Creek and the city as a result of entering into an agreement together. And I got to tell you, since I've been here at the city, we've worked together for many, many